So very recently, Gearbox has stated that basically the entirety of Secrets of the Storm is getting tweaked, which includes Gilded and Twisted Elites. That's all pretty cool stuff, I'm not gonna lie, and communication is always appreciated. I just hope they won't break the game this time when they implement it all. The response to my last video on Twisted Elites was pretty overwhelming. I would have never guessed that video would have done so well, especially considering my channel size. So even though it was just John algorithm at work, thank you so much to everyone who watched and subscribed. I appreciate it. But there's a couple corrections I want to make for my last video because I said a couple bits of misinformation unintentionally. This is extremely crucial information that I got wrong. Firstly, Twisted Elites reflect damage that's worth 2.5% of your total HP, not the enemies in the bubble. This was a massive oversight on my end. The phrasing on the wiki made me think that it was talking about the enemy's HP, but that is not the case. But depending on the enemy, you might still have to hit them a couple of times before killing them, and of course the bubble was big enough to fit a lot of enemies inside the bubble. So while it's not nearly as bad as I originally thought, these guys can still be very oppressive and get you killed very fast. And then secondly, and this is kind of an odd one, the bubble of the Twisted Elites will always be up until they're killed. But for some reason in my last video, I said that the bubble can sometimes go away. And I'm not even sure why I said this because I'm pretty sure I was aware that the bubble was permanent until the Twisted Elite is dead. So I guess I just had a brain fart there. Thanks to everyone who corrected me and brought these hiccups to my attention. Again, I'm really sorry for spreading misinformation. I probably should have done more research for that video. So today, I thought it would be interesting to go over the community's reaction to Twisted Elites via the comment section of my last video. It's just basically me reading through the comments, but I saw a ton of opinions and people discussing how Twisted Elites could be reworked, and I would love to give my thoughts on how I feel about these rework ideas too. Now, are any of these reworks going to be added? Probably not, but I think it would still be fun to look at them. I won't be able to cover everything as there's hundreds of comments, but I'll try my best to cover as many as I can. I'll also try and cover comments that are in favor of Twisted Elites, not just the ones that are against them. Surprisingly, there's quite a few people who actually think they're a good addition to the game, which I think is important to highlight. I'd rather this be an actual discussion of sorts than an echo chamber of Twisted Elite bad, please delete. These enemies have a chance at being good additions to the game, and I don't actually want them to be completely deleted despite what I said at the end of my last video. But with all that being said, let's finally jump into your comments. So coming in first, we have this comment, and I'm not even going to try and say their name because I don't want to butcher it. And they say, Twisted Elites are perfect, best addition to the DLC, only elite type that actually requires some thought and how to deal with. Brought back that sense of panic when I first saw Malachite Elites. Gilded, honestly, just kind of annoying for how tanky they are, but honestly the gold stuck isn't a problem. Earlier in the run, you don't have as much AoE, so accidentally losing all your money isn't as likely. And unless you're saving up for a gold chest, you really shouldn't lose more than a single chest worth of gold anyway. And like I said before, I can kind of see the reasoning as to why Twisted Elites even exist. Gearbox wanted an enemy that encourages target prioritization and something that could be a threat even to someone trying to go for a god run. I think that these enemies have the potential to be really interesting and game-changing while being fair if they were toned down in some areas or had their abilities adjusted. And something they can do is suggested by Daniel Kine here. He says that Twisted Elites also don't have any unique spawning sound effect like the other higher tier elites, which seems like a must-have if these guys are supposed to be the new most dangerous enemy for loop to runs. Just that unique spawn sound effect alone would make these guys a bit less annoying to deal with. And as for the aforementioned guild enemies, I never really minded them stealing gold, honestly. It's just really annoying how tanky they are. And do you have to kill them? No, you don't, I guess, but they can still be a bit of a slog if you happen to choose to engage with them. If guild enemies don't get changed, I guess that's fine. They're kind of just a whatever kind of enemy to me. Affogato Barista says, Twisted Elites should just take on the effects of other elites in the area. It makes the Twisted Elite super strong until you clear out the other elites. The idea of a super elite mini boss sounds pretty intimidating. I think they should slightly scale back on the potency of the effects that the super elite gains. So let's just say like the super elite has the abilities of avoid, malachite, and mending enemy. Maybe its collapse damage is a little weaker, its anti-healing effect is a bit shorter, and it doesn't heal other enemies as much. This causes them to still be a huge threat obviously because they have a ton of abilities, but it prevents them from being too excessively oppressive. Overall, I think this is a neat idea. Our next comment here is from Wooly, and it's definitely a pleasant surprise. Very awesome to have him here. And he says that percentage health reflect damage in a game where you have literally no control over when you damage something the majority of the time, especially on a loop which is conveniently the only time you encounter the reflect, and when the enemies have significantly more health than you do, and when you're hitting legit dozens of times per second, is an absolutely baffling design choice. As you said, there's just no way this concept should have made it past the first second of thought if it was from someone who actually plays Risk of Rain 2. Twisted Elite should be a very obvious example to everyone on how incompetent Gearbox is with the IP's fundamentals. I think the entire community can agree that we want new enemies that shake up the game. We've had the exact same game for years now, and I think change is good, but adding these enemies that clash with the foundations of Risk of Rain is a bit much. There's a reason why razor wires are blacklisted from items that enemies can obtain in the void fields. It just leads to a lot of people, regardless of how well they play or the difficulty they play on, being annoyed at best and pissed off at worst. I also do truly wonder just how much playtesting did this DLC go through, if it went through any at all. Our next comment is from Vistresian1941, sorry if I said your name wrong, and he says here to agree to disagree personally. I've got to say that I probably disagree with most of the issues that are raised here and on the Steam forum for Risk of Rain 2, even the quip about Little Disciple, since I've been playing the game with Artifact of Rebirth and choosing Little Disciple for my past 8 to 10 games. One of the main points I kept hearing was the mechanic of getting punished for looping and being aggressive with your gameplay. Normally, you only get punished for getting too defensive or indecisive, but with Twisted and Guild enemies, you're required to focus on new informational fields. And frankly, there's a ton of other content in the game that can randomly proc that gets you killed just as easy or easier than Twisted damage fields. So it's more of a complaint towards Risk of Rain 2 as a whole than it is the newer mechanic. If being punished for getting stronger is a legitimate concern, then it's more of a matter of finding solutions when challenging those who prefer going for God runs every time. If anything, it creates a legitimate ongoing threat that you have to keep in your peripheral. But all of that being considered, I've only had a partially close moment with Twisted damage. 9 out of 10 times, it's a Wisp or Lemurian that gets wiped the moment it spawns in, and it's not even a threat as is. And the few times I've gotten hit with unexpected Twisted damage, it gets mitigated by tougher times or repulsion armor plates that I get via Artifact of Command or in those triple shop terminals that offer them on vanilla runs, or via scrappers and printers. Fair to disagree, I have no qualms about that, but I will try to explain why I disagree with their points. Like I said, I think that it's good that there's new enemies to shake things up. I don't mind that Gearbox attempted to make an enemy that requires prioritization, but that's not how this enemy's intended purpose always pans out. They can sometimes just spawn out of thin air on top of a massive group of enemies you're already dealing with and get you killed before you're fully able to process that they've spawned in. And not knowing how you died is a thing that's always existed in Risk of Rain, like you said, but why should we add another possible way that your run could end to those BS random deaths? This issue already exists, so it's okay to add on to it. I just don't agree with that. I do agree that they add a threat that I constantly have to be on the lookout for, but finding a solution isn't always going to be readily available. Yes, if there's a repulsion armor plate printer or a teddy bear printer, or both of them in a multi-shop, then yeah, I probably would have minimal issues with them. But that's complete RNG if that happens. Well, to be fair, them spawning on top of enemies like I said earlier would also be RNG. But regardless, in a normal run, I find myself only having a couple of stacks of teddy bears or repulsion armor plates. Of course, if there's a printer, then I'm going to have more. But normally, I find myself just having to run away if there's enemies in the bubble and having to wait to attack them. I'm not going to judge you for using artifacts, although I will say that using command will make any enemy much easier to deal with. That doesn't excuse questionable design, but if you want to use them, fine. We can agree to disagree. If they're not problematic for your playstyle, then I'm not going to press any further. Shadowword126 says, triggering the reflect should temporarily break the bubble, effectively putting it on a cooldown and capping the amount of damage it can deal. It still just kinda sucks because uncontrollable chaining is a huge part of the game, but at least then a stray missile, band, or ukulele wouldn't get you killed. I think this is pretty fair. A major gripe I have with them is how the bubble is up until the twisted enemy is dead, which just results in me running away from them until the other enemies are away from the bubble, which I find to be very boring. But if the bubble could be broken, and there's a damage cap, then I'm more enticed to engage with them. Sure, I might take a brutal hit to my HP, but at least I won't get instantly one-shot. VeinJelly4630 says, my least favorite part about this is the fact that this is the third blue aspect in the game. There's so many other unused and far more appropriate colors they could have gone with were Twisted. Honestly, people might just call this a nitpick, but I wouldn't mind at all if they received a color change. Does it really matter? No, not really, because no other enemy has a giant blue bubble like them, which makes them already kind of distinct. But making them generally a bit more distinctive from other elites could help a little bit. And here's a similar comment by Messeldorf that says, if anything else, maybe don't add an elite unannounced that looks exactly like other blue elites and celestial enemies, and get surprised when your bug report inbox is filled with situations where players think the planet killed them by mistake. Yeah, with how bug riddled the launch of the DLC was, I would not be surprised at all if people thought the blue bubble was just a visual glitch. I've actually had quite a few people comment that my video was the first time they learned what these guys did, and that they weren't aware that these guys even existed. Kai7501 says, they could have literally made it so enemies in the bubble are invincible and it would have made them more balanced than this. This was essentially the idea that I also proposed. The reason why I like this idea is because it would still encourage enemy prioritization, and prevent your proc chains from deleting the entire map. They could bump up the Twisted Elite HP to compensate for this. Scale of Fun says, had a great run going until Fireworks apparently hit something near one of those elites. Thanks Gearbox, very cool. Man, oh man, do I agree, because bundles of Fireworks is one of my favorite items in the game. I just think the sound effects and visuals are pretty cool, and the free damage is always nice, and they're especially fun if you have a pocket ICBM with you. But I've legit died because my missiles target an enemy inside the Twisted Bubble that I had no control over and I didn't see, and I also had a pocket ICBM. Average Chuba fan says, I'd prefer that instead of reflecting damage, the Twisted Elite is invulnerable until all other enemies inside the bubble are dead. This is a reversal of the idea that I propose, where all enemies inside the bubble get huge damage reduction. And I think this is an idea that sounds good on paper, but I do have to wonder how good it would be in practice. It could be annoying with enemies constantly spawning and the Twisted enemy taking forever to die, but at least you wouldn't get one shot. Fully Agitated here says that they want a rework where items don't proc on the enemies within the bubble. I don't know if this would be easy to implement, but it's another way they could gimp your items. It places more emphasis on raw stats rather than items, which could be a neat idea, I guess. This is a bit of a longer one. So this is from David Dragonheart 6798, and they say, I feel like the Twisted Elite was designed this way purposely to make even God runs and looping a small challenge. Before Seekers of the Storm, it didn't take much to start a map-wide nuke build. Effectively, it doesn't take much to start building AoE, so you can kill 100% without even using your mouse anymore. This new elite enemy is a good threat, as it means to not end the run as fast. You should focus on the elite with its high single target damage as opposed to the usual AoE wipe. It could use a rework, however. As you mentioned, it only takes a single proc of Ukulele to end your run, and if we loop, odds are we will have at least a few stacks. I propose that the range of the elite's effect is dramatically increased, but the damage is only reflected on you if you're inside the field as well, and the damage is capped to prevent you from being wiped by it directly. For example, if the damage would do 200 damage, enough to kill at a time, and you don't have your one-shot protection, it still cannot kill you, but it will put you at 1 HP. Any and all times this triggers, the lowest your health can get from this is 1. This way, literally anything can wipe you if you're not careful, even fall damage. Similar to how Malachite elites stop your healing, it doesn't kill you, but it makes it easier for something else to kill you since you can't just regen that back. If you are smart and avoid the Malachite spikes, you'll be fine and regen won't be stopped. Great idea. As I said earlier, just a damage cap alone would be enough for me to be satisfied. They also brought up a good point about how the Twisted Elite is setting you up to be killed by something else, just like a Malachite. And there's not much else for me to say, just a very well thought out rework. Delirium the Waifu 7030 says, I like the DLC, I don't care. I also like the DLC, despite it obviously being very unpolished. I know the video was very ranty, but I still really like playing the DLC, and I still like playing Risk of Rain too. The point of that video was just to express it was just one of the many grievances that I have with this DLC. I want this game to be the best it possibly can, and that's why I care so much. But I'm happy for you if you don't have any problems with this DLC, I guess. Matrix Mushroom 2285 says, with a longer comment, this video is great, but you missed a couple of things that make it even worse. So firstly, it's not just attack damage that causes the reflection. Damage over time can also do this, which includes accurate's poisoned, anything that bleeds, and it can very easily guarantee end your run, because it will hit you with a percentage of the enemy's health every single time that damage ticks. Even worse, if you hit an enemy outside the bubble and then it walks into the bubble, the damage over time will still kill you. And number 2, any build with Gesture of the Drowned is likely invalidated. If you have Forgiving Please, Disposal Missile Launcher, Bottled Chaos, Hellfire Tincture, or Prayon Accumulator, you could easily just be punished for existing on the stage. Number 3, literally just having a lot of gasoline. If you have a large amount of gasoline, then no matter what enemy you kill, it will instantly cause every enemy within this range to gain a dot effect, meaning that you'll be taking ticks of reflected damage from every single enemy that's inside the bubble, almost instantly killing you. Number 4, Razor Wire. I wish I was joking, but Razor Wire. If you have Razor Wire and are hit by an enemy within the Twisted Elite's bubble, then when your Razor Wire damages those enemies, it will not only give you those ticks of damage, but also likely proc dot effects on them, killing you. I don't have much to say here. I appreciate you for catching stuff that I didn't mention in my video. Thanks for that. Hunted for Blood says, I think a simple solution is just that they should only reflect damage if you are also inside the bubble. This gives you a more interesting choice to A, fight them from a distance, or B, focus on the elite really quickly. While I think it's a decent rework, the obvious flaw here is that the melee survivors get the short end of the stick, but otherwise, I wouldn't mind this. If they want to compensate for you having to be in the bubble in order to take the reflected damage, perhaps they could make the radius of the bubble even larger. Plasma Bald says, on Gildeds, their fundamental design is risk, so this is about guild enemies, not Twisted, which just makes no sense. It would be one thing if they took your gold but took more damage in the process, then you'd be paying more gold to deal additional damage. It'd be another thing if they took reduced damage but gave you gold, then you'd be chipping away at gilded armor, sacrificing damage for additional gold. But instead, the double negative design encourages you to simply cease interacting with them entirely. But hey, at least they don't instantly kill you, I guess. Honestly, I think this idea is really cool. I would be totally down with an enemy that is super tanky but gives you a ton of gold. Because if that was the case, I could see myself telling my friends to go hunt it down and focus on it so we could all get a huge burst in gold. It sounds pretty fun. Maybe they could also make it a rarer or less frequent spawning enemy type so you can feel really special and more enticing to kill. And please don't make it a boss spawn. I hate fighting gilded bosses, they take forever to die. Colin475 says, I don't think the idea is bad. The reflect should just be a projectile that can miss though, because it is stupid that no matter what you do, a single process chain, I guess they mean proc chain, can kill you even if you run across the map and take cover. I'm totally fine with this because the fact that I could be across the map and take damage no matter where I am is pretty dumb. It would still encourage me to fight while constantly being mobile, so I'm still engaged with the game. Our last comment here is from Mr. Mega 1423. Feel free to pause the video and read this comment for yourself. It's a bit of a longer one. I'll be honest, I'm not going to read the entire thing because my throat is feeling pretty strained. I'm not used to talking this much, if I'm being honest, and it doesn't help that I've been sick while recording this entire video, so sorry about that, but I don't think I'll be able to read this entire thing. So that was a lot. I agree that the damage should be avoidable to some degree. Maybe you have to be in line of sight to take damage because, as Mr. Mega here said, it gives us options to engage with them. I am aware that Twisted Leads do 10 times damage, but I've never noticed it having an effect on my games, so I guess I've just been lucky and not been getting hit by them. As for gilded enemies, yeah, I think they should spawn on like stage 3 or 4 and beyond because of their stat difference compared to normal elites. And again, they should have their HP tweaked because they're just way too tanky. Also, I like that they mentioned that Wake of Vultures is better. It's basically a bottom 5 red for me whenever I get it, so at least I can cope and not cry as hard whenever I do get it now. And that's basically all I have time for. I'm sorry if it felt a bit rushed towards the end. There's of course so many other comments I wasn't able to read. Once again, I'm really appreciative of the feedback I got from my last video, and I hope this video was able to spark more discussion. Also, this is probably going to be my last video on Twisted Elites because with Gearbox's decision to adjust them, I don't have much reason to delve into them any further. My next video is going to be a ranking of the new Mastery skins, so definitely a much more fun video. Feel free to leave a comment if you have something that you think I missed or you just want to call me an idiot because I got something wrong. Otherwise, have a good day.